philanthropy defines a big space, and the one version of philanthropy which Africa has experienced is that people giving to each other, particularly in poor communities, relationships based on reciprocity and solidarity, but also experiences of people with wealth helping out others. So sending them to university, sending them to school, and I think that's all very well documented and certainly is the lived reality for many Africans. There's also the philanthropy that's come from outside, of external foundations that have funded a lot of progressive work, particularly in Africa, the Ford Foundation, the Mott Foundation, but that's been money coming from outside, applied often in a kind of long-term, responsive kind of way. And obviously now you have the emergence of the new philanthropists, the Africans with wealth, who are setting up their own foundations. And I would see community foundations and community philanthropy as really as the institutions that can cultivate all those different forms. It needn't be that if someone has money they have to set up their own foundation each time. But as you have a growing infrastructure of these types of institutions that can harness these different kinds of philanthropic assets under a single roof and essentially bridge these different worlds, that's sort of how I see the particular cross-section of philanthropy that we're working with at the Global Fund. If you take all those individual acts of goodwill and harnessing them under a single roof in a strategic way with some direction, some vision. And I think one of the things about community foundations is by and large they're not sector specific. They're the idea that you can respond to the changing needs of a community. The idea that you're building up an asset for the community which can serve to respond to the changing needs of a community. So for example, if there's a sudden demographic change, there's a flood somewhere and people from outside that community come in and suddenly you have issues around social cohesion. The idea of an institution that's looking out for the well-being of its community, that sits on its own assets and resources, so is able to harness those and leverage other resources and assets from outside, that's been there for a while, so it has a track record, it has relationships, it's not arriving into a situation new, so it can add those sort of insights and those understandings to money that's brought in from outside. And I think that moves those different individual acts into a much more kind of progressive, forward-looking space. Having an institution that its mandate is to look out for the well-being of a community, I think is quite profound and has tended to be missing from much of development where it has been sector-based, where there's been money available, and sorry, we do children, we don't do the elderly. And so we see a lot of that within the community foundations we work with, that they have a youth program and then they start doing something, say with the elderly, and they suddenly realise they should be connecting dots. So they're kind of fostering that kind of social cohesion, both in terms of the people they're bringing together in terms of givers, but also in the way that they can frame their programs. That you can connect and take a more holistic view of what a community is.